we think of people who are highly creative, one of the major, I think, cultural images, stereotypes, or perhaps archetypes, is the one of the struggling artist, the person who suffers, whose life is miserable, who sacrifices their happiness for the sake of their creative output. Your research seemed to indicate that this is not exactly normal for creative people.
No, I think, Jeff, that a lot of this myth comes from fairly recent developments in our culture. Before the Renaissance, the artists were very upstanding, normal parts of their culture, and now it's almost expected that you should be struggling and suffering, but it's not certainly part of what it takes to be creative. It may be a byproduct of creativity when the culture ignores the artist, when the culture puts too many obstacles in the way of a person who wants to express herself or himself in poetry or art or music. And as a result of the being ignored and opposed, many of them end up breaking down in various ways. But it's not the part that makes them creative. Creativity can coexist with a very happy and full life.
And your work seems to suggest that people who are creative are also very productive and healthy in their approach to life.
Yeah. I studied creativity in a variety of fields, including the traditional fields of the arts and music and literature, but also I was interested in creativity in science, and so many of the people I interviewed were physicists, chemists, biologists, like John Salk, who discovered the polio vaccine, and individuals, 15 Nobel Prize winners in the group, and also businessmen and statesmen who contributed to the culture and changed the way we live, changed the way we think. And certainly these people, on the whole, led fairly normal, happy, contented lives. Creativity seems to involve mental problems more in some of the arts, like playwrights, poets often have problems, but I think that is partly because of the way in which the culture responds to their work. But certainly scientists and people who contribute to the culture outside of the arts are rarely prey to this kind of disturbance that, since Romanticism, we attribute to creativity.
Well, one of the characteristics that I seem to see a thread running through the 90 or so people that you studied in depth who were highly creative is that while I don't think that they needed to unnecessarily challenge themselves, they often overcame unusual challenges that confronted them.
Yeah, yeah. That was one of the interesting things, is that if you look at the background of the people I interviewed, they seem to come from two very different family types and backgrounds. They either come from fairly disturbed families. By disturbed, I mean that the father probably died before you were 10 years old, which happened to a lot of these people.
In fact, you even quote Sartre at one point saying that the best gift the father can give his son is to die early.
That's right. That was told by some of the people I interviewed. They referred back to Le Mot by Sartre. And so that is characteristic of almost half of the sample, that they overcame a very difficult childhood. But the interesting thing is then there's an equal number of children whose parents were intellectuals, artists, professionals who were opened up a lot of possibilities to them in childhood, who exposed them to a lot of new ideas, and who supported them in various ways. So it's not that creativity is determined by one or the other of this childhood environments, it shows that anybody, that it's possible to overcome or to use the supports that you have, but what's missing is the great middle ground. Normal, quote, normal families are not represented very well among our creatives.
Isn't that interesting? How do you account for that?
Well, I think if you have a fairly comfortable childhood, but without too much support and too much challenge, but comfortable, you don't see the necessity to stretch yourself, to get into new situations, to explore, to break through boundaries. You just are comfortable and you go ahead with living that way.
It sounds as if what you're saying is that amongst Western, let's say, middle-class families, there is a kind of numbing influence where the lower classes and perhaps the upper classes break through that somehow.
Yeah, that's how it looks, actually. And even in terms of economic background, they come from poor families or fairly well off, but not the middle. And that makes, in a sense, you can, after the fact, it's easy to see why that should be like that. But I think it also tells you that if you want your child to benefit the most from the opportunities that are potentially there in life, you should stretch yourself a little bit as a parent.